Hi everybody, Thomas here, and since Stranger Things is in its final season and in full swing, we decided to jump on the bandwagon and create a classic style video ourselves, and that's going to be in a cinematic style. So let's go take a look. And since Stranger Things has two worlds, or two realities, we created two edits, and of course in the style of those worlds. Let's start off with the upside down world first. I already have the photo open in the develop module that we'll be editing. And as usual, next to the edited photo, I have a reference image that I'll be using as a guide. Let's start with exposure and then move on to colors later. First of all, I'll adjust the exposure to simulate darkness. So let's significantly lower the exposure. And then on the other hand, I'm gonna lift the shadows. Let's pull highlights and whites all the way down. And let's also lower the blacks just a bit to add some contrast. And since the contrast is too low for a night scene, let's increase that as well. Okay, this already looks very dark, so let's move on to colors. I'm gonna start with white balance. Let's push the temperature to just quite a low setting. And since the blue looks just a bit too magenta, let's slightly shift the tint towards green. All right, let's check it again to the reference image. And you can see that this is already very close, but there still are some details that we simply need to fine tune. Specifically the individual color tones that need to be muted. Because, for example, there's basically no greenery in the upside down. First, we're gonna have to adjust the blues, so let's use the Shift Primary Colors tool, and only then move on to individual colors. Let's max out the saturation of blues, and I'm not gonna touch the hue. So let's slightly lower the saturation of greens, but not overdo it, and then we'll take care of the rest later. I'm also gonna significantly reduce the saturation of reds. If you'd like us to edit one of your photographs, feel free to send it to video@zoner.com and we'd be happy to take a look at it and see what we can create out of it. Let's compare again. Okay, we're already very close, and now it's time to focus on individual colors. I'm gonna scroll up to split toning, and I'm not gonna work with hue here, but mainly with saturation and lightness just to mute those unwanted colors. So I'll slightly reduce saturation for reds, oranges, yellows, and then also greens. And slightly for turquoise and blues as well. And since lowering saturation made the blues look a bit faded, I'm gonna lower the lightness of turquoise and blues, and then let's compare it again. Okay, I feel like we're really close and it's almost done, but I just can't help myself. I wanna fine tune one last detail. There's just a bit too much blue in the highlights and not enough in the shadows. And the tone curve is exactly what we need to help with that. So let's add blue to the shadows and remove it from the highlights. And now it feels like the highlights in the sky turned slightly green, so let's select green and very carefully, ever so slightly, reduce it in the lighter tones. And that's it. One last comparison with the reference image. Awesome. This already looks like a Demogorgon could jump out from behind the horizon at any second. So that was the upside down edit. Now let's get back to the edit from the normal world, and it's gonna be a lot less complex, so let's just jump straight into it. So once again, I have both the photo I want to edit and the reference image open in the develop module. And we'll start again with exposure. Let's slightly lower the exposure, lift the shadows a bit, and significantly reduce the highlights to bring back detail in the sky. And to restore some contrast, I'm gonna increase the whites and lower the blacks. Now let's compare. That should be enough for exposure. It already looks pretty close. So now let's move on to colors. And it's obvious that the reference image is gonna be much less saturated, but let's leave the overall saturation till the very end. I wanna clearly see what individual colors are doing while I am adjusting them. Now this time let's start with color adjustments with the red tint that's quite strong in the reference image. First, let's take care of the white balance. So I'll increase the temperature and shift the tint towards purple. And I'll compare to see if I'm going in the right direction, and it looks like we are. But we're still missing that reddish tone that's especially visible in the sky of the reference image. So let's use the tone curve and lift the red channel in the highlights, and then let's compare again. There's enough red in the sky now, but it's just not as visible in the rest of the photo. So let's use split toning and add a reddish orange tone to the overall colors and then compare again. Okay, now I can see that we slightly overdid it. So I'm gonna go back to split toning and fine tune the hue just a bit more. And remember, if you're not completely happy with your adjustments, don't be afraid to take a step back and just fix your corrections early on. It's much better to fix a mistake early than to deal with it later in a much more complicated way, and it just becomes a hassle and it's annoying. So just take a step back if you need to right off. The red tint should be enough now, and it's time to work on specific colors. So let's move on to split toning. Let's start with hue and mainly watch the blanket the models are wearing, as well as the greenery around them. I'll shift red towards yellow, orange towards red, and then yellow as well. I'll move green towards blue and blue towards purple. Next is saturation, and here I'm really not afraid to add it because I remember I haven't touched the overall saturation yet, and I'll deal with that at the end. So I'll increase saturation for reds and oranges and reduce saturation for greens because of the surrounding greenery. I'll also lower saturation for blues so the sky isn't too blue. And finally, let's reduce lightness for reds and greens, and let's compare. Now it's very clear how much more saturated the photo is compared to the reference. So I'll lower both saturation and vibrance, and then let's compare again. Okay, even though we're very close color-wise, I can see that the skin tones look awful, and I definitely overdid the red tint there. So let's first add the global hue in color shift. So let's first adjust the global hue in color shift, and then I'll add saturation to both yellows and oranges. And finally, let's compare it again. All right, this works for me. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. And that's it. Both world edits are done. And to those of you who are awesome enough and patient enough to make it this far in the video, we've got a little surprise for you. Instead of manually doing all these adjustments by yourself, we wanted to save you some time. And in the description link, you'll find a link to download these presets yourselves and test it out on your own photos. I hope you guys liked this video. Give us a thumbs up. Even if you didn't, give us a thumbs up anyway. Let us know what you think in the comments below. We always like reading them. And don't forget to hit that subscribe bell so that you never miss another video. Until then, see you next time.